sealed letter, a hidden fortune, a final royal shock. 1 year after her passing, Queen Elizabeth II's private letter, locked away in Windsor's vault, has been opened. Its contents? Explosive. The Queen bypassed Camilla entirely, naming Catherine, Princess of Wales, as the sole heir to her £485 million personal fortune. This wasn't about titles, it was about trust. Behind palace walls, rage erupted. Charles was shaken, Camilla furious, but Elizabeth's handwritten words were clear. Catherine holds the future, not by name, but by heart. Now, the monarchy stands divided, and the world is watching. A letter sealed in silence. On a quiet Monday morning in October 2023, a royal courier stepped through the ornate gates of Kensington Palace holding a single sealed envelope. Embossed with Queen Elizabeth II's golden crest and marked "To be opened upon circumstance," it was no ordinary delivery. This envelope had been locked away for over a year in the private vaults of Windsor Castle, untouched, unread, and completely unknown to the public. Inside the palace walls, Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, were called into a private room with the royal solicitor, Sir Martin Hensley. The doors were closed, curtains drawn, no aides allowed. For 32 minutes there was silence, only the sound of unfolding parchment and the weight of the Queen's words hanging in the air. The letter was handwritten, deliberate, strong, and unmistakably Elizabeth. It didn't speak of titles. It didn't mention reign or protocol. Instead, it focused on something far more personal: her private fortune. And in a single stunning sentence, the Queen revealed her wish that changed everything. She named Catherine, and only Catherine, as the sole beneficiary of her private estate. Not King Charles, not Queen Camilla, but the woman she once whispered reminded her of herself. The monarchy, in that moment, quietly cracked. The sealed letter didn't address the crown or its future. It targeted something older, deeper, and fiercely protected: Queen Elizabeth's personal fortune. And it revealed how far she was willing to go to preserve her version of legacy. The personal fortune hidden from the crown estate. Many forget that Queen Elizabeth II, despite her role as sovereign, also held immense personal wealth, separate from the crown estate, distinct from taxpayer scrutiny. This was her private domain, untouched by government hands, protected by decades of careful planning. And the numbers are jaw-dropping. The estimated value? £485 million, spread across personal art collections, rare jewels, offshore accounts, and discrete real estate holdings from Balmoral to Sandringham. Among them was a mysterious Caribbean trust, established in 1994, said to quietly grow year by year. These weren't just royal assets, they were pieces of her life, tucked away from public and political interference. Unlike crown-held treasures, these assets were under her sole control. She could give them to whomever she wished, no approval needed. And for years, speculation swirled over what she would do with it. Some assumed it would naturally pass to King Charles III, as father and son prepared for a seamless transition. But Elizabeth had different ideas. The letter made it clear: this wealth was not to reinforce the throne. It was to honor a person, one whose dignity, calm, and quiet strength reminded Elizabeth of the girl who had taken the crown at just 25 years old. And that person was not Camilla. She called it her final act of personal sovereignty, a gift, not a statement. But inside the palace, it hit like a thunderclap. The Queen didn't just leave Catherine money, she left her a message. One full of meaning, memory, and unmistakable judgment. The next question was simple. Why her? Catherine named sole beneficiary. In the carefully penned letter, Queen Elizabeth's tone softened, but the message was razor-sharp. She began by describing Catherine with words rarely heard in royal correspondence: unwavering grace, maternal instinct, and quiet discipline. She thanked her for being a constant to Prince William during the turbulent aftermath of 1997, referring to the tragic loss of Princess Diana. She didn't just admire Catherine, she trusted her. The Queen wrote that Catherine reminded her of herself in the early 1950s. Young, burdened by expectation, yet steady. She has a strength that doesn't seek the spotlight, Elizabeth noted, but it holds the light steady for others. It was more than flattery. It was endorsement. Then came the line that made the room go cold. Where unity was needed, she remained still. Where survival was sought, others took power. A subtle, unmistakable reference to Camilla, who was only mentioned once in the entire letter. Elizabeth described her as an agent of survival, not unity. A brutal phrase from a woman known for restraint. It implied that Camilla's presence, though tolerated, was never truly accepted. Not in her heart, not in her legacy. To Catherine, the Queen left not just money, but responsibility. Use it as you see fit, she wrote, but know that it is given in faith, not strategy. This wasn't about politics or optics. It was about something far more sacred: personal judgment. Inside Clarence House, the Queen's words landed like betrayal, and as the ink dried on her legacy, Charles and Camilla's fury began to burn. Charles and Camilla's private fury. The moment the letter's contents were confirmed, a discreet call was placed to Clarence House. King Charles III, still adjusting to his new role just 13 months into his reign, received the news in a private briefing. Eyewitnesses claim he sat in silence for nearly 5 minutes before uttering a word. One courtier described him as visibly shaken, not just surprised, but betrayed. For decades, Charles had assumed that his mother's vast private wealth would eventually bolster the reign he had waited over 70 years to begin. But now, a quiet document, written in Elizabeth's own hand, had bypassed him entirely. And more painfully, it had passed directly to Catherine, his daughter-in-law, not Camilla, his queen. Camilla's reaction, however, was anything but silent. Sources within her inner circle say she demanded an urgent consultation with the Privy Council, alleging that the letter undermines the natural order of succession. At 72 years old, Camilla had endured decades of public scrutiny and private exile to become queen. Now, in one stroke, Elizabeth had erased her from the Queen's personal legacy. Behind palace walls, voices were raised. Camilla allegedly accused Catherine of manipulating public sympathy and playing the long, silent game. Charles tried to maintain composure, urging restraint, but insiders claim he was torn, trapped between the woman he loved and the family image he desperately needed to protect. The royal solicitor was summoned again. His reply was clear. This was Her Majesty's private estate. Her final wishes are lawful and binding under civil inheritance law. No room for debate, no royal override. Charles reportedly spent 2 nights in seclusion at Highgrove, drafting a personal response that was ultimately never sent. Camilla, meanwhile, explored legal counsel, but quickly discovered that contesting the letter would mean taking the matter public. And that, more than anything, was the palace's worst nightmare. With tempers flaring behind closed doors, the royal household now faced a chilling realization. This was no longer just a family affair. It was a legal and constitutional firestorm, and it had the power to burn everything. Legal ramifications inside the monarchy. Inside the walls of Buckingham Palace, an emergency legal summit was convened, one that had nothing to do with Parliament or protocol. This wasn't a state issue. It was about private wealth, private decisions, and a queen's final, irreversible command. At the table sat senior royal aides, legal advisors, and communications officers. They examined every line of Elizabeth's letter, cross-referenced it with UK civil inheritance law, and confirmed the assets were not part of the Crown estate, nor were they subject to sovereign redistribution. They belonged to Elizabeth Windsor, the individual, not the monarch. Under British law, contesting a private will of this nature, especially one signed, sealed, and dated over 12 months prior to death, was nearly impossible. More importantly, challenging it publicly would be seen as the royal family turning on itself. Camilla's camp pushed for a discreet clause, a compromise, a shared trust, even a symbolic donation to soften the optics. But legal counsel pushed back. To interfere with the Queen's direct intent, one barrister warned, would be perceived as moral theft. Meanwhile, Catherine's legal team remained entirely silent, offering no comment, no pushback, no legal filings. Their silence only intensified the tension. It was dignified, deliberate, and devastating. Rumors began circulating in the royal press office that royal historians were quietly calling the letter the Queen's true succession. One aide was overheard saying, "It's not about the money. It's about who she trusted to carry her spirit forward." To avoid scandal, a PR blackout was enforced. No public mention of the letter, no confirmation, not even a denial. But within the inner circle, battle lines had been drawn, and the Queen, even in death, had chosen her side. But while the monarchy braced for fallout, royal insiders began whispering about the letter's timing and what truly pushed the Queen to write it in the first place. A legacy rewritten. The Queen's letter was dated September 8, 2021, exactly 1 year before her passing at Balmoral. The timing raised eyebrows. Why then? What happened behind palace walls that made her seal her private wishes and keep them hidden from even her heir? Insiders now point to a tense 3-day retreat at Balmoral Castle in early September 2021, where Elizabeth, increasingly frail, held private meetings with Charles and Camilla. Multiple sources describe those talks as deeply strained. One aide recalls hearing the Queen remark afterward, "They want to preserve the crown, but not its soul." Not long after, the Queen took a walk alone across the Highland Moors, a place she often went when burdened. Upon returning, she asked her secretary to bring out a leather-bound folder, untouched since the 1980s, reserved for personal decisions. And in it, she began writing the letter. In the text, she refers to Catherine not just as a duchess or future queen, but as the monarchy's moral compass. She praised her ability to endure scrutiny without retaliation, to raise children with warmth yet dignity, and to stand beside William through scandal, grief, and unrelenting pressure. She made only one indirect reference to Diana, writing, "The crown cracked once when love was lost. It must not crack again." A line royal biographers now call the pivot of the Queen's legacy. The letter is no longer viewed as a simple inheritance. It's now understood as a final act of stewardship. A quiet course correction by a monarch who feared that the institution she preserved for 70 years was slipping from its moral anchor. And in Catherine, Queen Elizabeth saw not just stability, but redemption. While the palace buried the truth beneath silence, one woman remained unshaken, untouched by scandal, and impossibly composed. Catherine, the reluctant heiress to a queen's final wish. Catherine's response. In the days following the letter's disclosure, Catherine, Princess of Wales, remained entirely silent. No public statements, no subtle interviews, not even a shift in her schedule. From the outside, nothing changed, but those closest to her knew the storm had landed. Inside Apartment 1A of Kensington Palace, Catherine was described by a family friend as humbled, honored, and heartbreakingly quiet. She hadn't asked for the fortune. She hadn't known about the letter. And when she read the Queen's words for the first time, "You carry the light forward, even when others dim it," she reportedly wept. Her first words to Prince William, according to a royal insider, were whispered in disbelief. "It's not about the money. It's about what she saw in me." Catherine understood the gravity of what had happened. The Queen had placed a legacy on her shoulders that could ignite tension throughout the entire royal family. But what troubled her most wasn't the backlash from Camilla. It was William's position. As heir to the throne, he was now caught in the middle. Catherine reportedly told a confidant, "I fear this could break them apart, father and son." In private, she met with her personal legal counsel and requested that the majority of the estate be converted into a charitable trust. She outlined a vision to fund child advocacy programs, women's education, and mental health services for struggling families. Her goal wasn't grandeur, it was protection, of image, of intention, of peace. That Catherine refused interviews. She declined cover stories. When Tatler reached out for a feature, her team sent back 2 words: no comment. Her silence was not retreat, it was power. And the more she stayed out of the headlines, the more the world filled in the blanks with admiration. Because while Camilla fought the inheritance, Catherine inherited the public's heart. But as Catherine kept the peace, William faced an unbearable reality. The inheritance had exposed not just a family rift, but a monarchy divided by legacy, loyalty, and love. William torn between inheritance and unity. For Prince William, the Queen's letter was a blessing wrapped in a bombshell. It honored his wife, then risked destroying his relationship with his father. And in the royal world, fractures between heirs are more than personal. They're national. Within 24 hours of the letter's legal verification, William scheduled a private meeting with King Charles III at Clarence House. No staff, no aides, just father and son, locked in a quiet conversation that lasted nearly 3 hours. According to palace insiders, the meeting was strained. Charles, still wounded, refused to speak emotionally. He focused only on the legality of the will and questioned whether Catherine's team would consider a co-managed trust. William reportedly paused before replying, "She hasn't asked for this. It was given to her by your mother." Charles, whose relationship with his own mother was famously complex, said very little. But behind his eyes, it was clear. This wasn't just about money. It was about being bypassed, overlooked, rejected by the Queen, by his son, by a public that had already started choosing sides. William offered compromise. He proposed that joint charitable initiatives be launched in the Queen's name, shared between the palace and the new trust Catherine was planning. He hoped this would ease tensions, keep the family image united, and prevent media fallout. But Charles, known for pride and principle, gave no clear answer. Since then, insiders report that William and Charles have kept communication polite but minimal. Their public appearances together feel rehearsed, forced. The warmth that once marked their bond is gone. And behind them, the cracks in the monarchy are growing. One letter had done what decades of scandal couldn't, made the future king question the crown. But even as the royals scrambled behind closed doors, the outside world began to stir. And once the leak hit social media, no one could contain what came next. Public sentiment erupts. The letter was never supposed to see the light of day, but in the age of whispers and Wi-Fi, nothing stays secret for long. Within 9 days, details of Queen Elizabeth's final bequest began to leak across X, formerly Twitter, and TikTok, sparked by a royal insider with just 3 words: Elizabeth chose Catherine. By the end of the week, the hashtag Elizabeth's Wish was trending in 16 countries. Online forums lit up. Tabloids scrambled for confirmation, and the headlines were ruthless. The Daily Mail led with, "The Queen's final message, Catherine, not Camilla." The Mirror splashed, "The last queen picks the next one." The Guardian ran a more somber analysis. "The crown's moral succession begins." Public sentiment was immediate, and overwhelmingly in favor of Catherine. She was dubbed the People's Princess 2.0, the Quiet Queen, and the monarchy's last hope. Meanwhile, Camilla's approval ratings plummeted by 24 points in under 2 weeks. Editorials resurrected painful headlines from the 1990s, rehashing the Diana saga and comparing it to the current divide. The narrative was unforgiving. Camilla had been tolerated. Catherine was now celebrated. Younger Britons, especially those between 18 and 35, polled with 82% support for Catherine receiving the private fortune. Many cited her modern values and non-political grace as reasons she was better suited to carry the Queen's legacy. Royal watchers saw it for what it was, not just a will, but a war of symbolism. One commentator said it best on live television: "Camilla may be queen by law, but Catherine is queen by legacy." The crown hadn't moved, but public loyalty had. And as the tide shifted outside the palace walls, the true meaning of the Queen's decision became clear. Her final gesture wasn't about wealth. It was about who would carry the spirit of the crown into a new era. The monarchy's future realigned. In early March 2024, a quiet announcement appeared on the Royal Foundation website. The launch of the Elizabeth Foundation, spearheaded by Catherine, Princess of Wales. Its mission: child mental health, women's education, and support for grieving families. Causes deeply tied to both Catherine's life and Elizabeth's legacy. The foundation was funded entirely by the Queen's personal fortune, with no government ties, and with zero involvement from Camilla or Charles. The message was clear. This wasn't about royal duty. It was about royal memory. In the months that followed, Catherine's public presence grew sharper, more purposeful. She visited children's hospitals across Manchester, launched school-based wellness programs in Bristol, and sat privately with young mothers in Essex. She never mentioned the letter. She never acknowledged the inheritance. But the symbolism was everywhere. Meanwhile, Camilla quietly pulled back. She cancelled appearances in Scotland, missed the royal ascot, and cited fatigue and emotional strain in her first interview since the leak. Her team denied any rift, but royal insiders knew better. Prince William, now fully immersed in both family life and royal duty, walked a tightrope. He stood beside his father at Trooping the Colour, but his eyes lingered on Catherine during the national anthem. Their bond, now visible and revered, had become the emotional core of the monarchy. Finally, in July 2024, the palace released a rare statement, brief, powerful, and unsigned. Her Majesty's wishes remain her legacy, rooted in grace, guided by love. And with that, the chapter closed. Not with scandal, but with a crown passed in silence, from one queen to the next. It was sealed, stamped with the Queen's personal crest, hidden deep inside Windsor Castle's private vault. And now Queen Elizabeth II's final personal letter has surfaced, and it's sending shockwaves through the monarchy. The letter, handwritten and dated September 2021, was never meant for the public eye. It was to be opened under specific circumstance, and that moment arrived after a tense legal review inside Kensington Palace. Only 3 people were present: Prince William, Catherine, and the royal solicitor. Its content? Shocking, bold, unmistakable. Queen Elizabeth had bypassed King Charles. She had ignored Camilla, Queen Consort. Instead, she had written in ink, "To Catherine, I entrust my personal fortune, because you carry the dignity this crown demands." The private fortune in question is not part of the crown estate. It's a separate treasure, valued at £485 million, consisting of secret trusts, estates like Balmoral and Sandringham, priceless heirlooms, and offshore investments dating back to the 1980s. Charles, reportedly visibly stunned, remained silent. But Camilla, she exploded, demanding legal intervention, calling the letter an insult to the throne. Her anger, insiders say, turned quickly to desperation. But royal law is clear. Personal wealth is private, and Queen Elizabeth had the legal right to give it to anyone she chose. Why Catherine? Because, in the Queen's own words, she has remained unshaken, unloud, and unbroken. Elizabeth referenced Diana, warned of legacy cracks, and pointed to Catherine as the family's moral compass. Behind closed doors, the family is at war. Publicly, Catherine remains silent, graceful, poised, untouched. But her world has changed. She now holds the keys to a fortune the Queen once guarded with her life. This isn't just inheritance, it's a shift in legacy. And for Camilla, the message was brutal. You may sit beside the king, but you were never chosen by the Queen.